All right, everyone. Welcome back to the Gully Blanchard podcast. We took about a 9 month break due to just sometimes life getting in the way, but we are back. Coming to you from the continent of California. My name is Ryan Anderson. This was originally a one-man podcast. Then I brought two of my closest friends in. We did kind of a three-man weave for a couple years. I had some fun with that, but wanted to get back to doing some things that I like talking about. Talking about some really interesting stuff with some people that I enjoy talking to, either whether it be on social media or in real life or what have you. So this is going to be a one-man show. It's generally going to be about the stuff that I find interesting. If you follow me on Twitter at Gully Blanchard, which is GULLYBLANCHARD, you'll know that I'm a big Eagles fan, big wrestling fan, big life fan in general. So I usually try to find someone once a week that I get along real well with. I could have a good conversation, and someone that I think you guys will be really interested to hear from. This podcast will be available on iTunes at Gully Blanchard, GULLYBLANCHARD. That's where you can either subscribe on iTunes, follow me on Twitter. We're also going to be available at No Coast Bias, where you can catch some of the wrestling writing articles that I've done. You can catch previous podcasts over on there. You can also check out all 72 episodes at gullyblanchard.podbean.com. or pretty much wherever you can find podcasts. So, yeah, we're going to go back to doing kind of a one-man interview format where I sit down and talk to some pretty interesting people. This week is going to be no different. The guy I want to bring in is going to be responsible for the amount of stuff that I have in my man cave when I get this place set up here. It's a great guy, really a good Philadelphia connection. Nick Picone from Straight Shooters in Philadelphia, influencer. Welcome in.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate the great intro as well.
Yeah, man. So I know you work, you and Vaughn Johnson do Straight Shooters. I know I check it out as often as I can. For the people who don't know about that or haven't heard about it, what do you guys like talking about? Where can people find your stuff?
So Vaughn had previously worked at Philly.com, and he was a sports producer there and worked overnights, but he also wrote about wrestling. And when I started writing, this was maybe around the same time or maybe a little bit before Vaughn had joined Philly.com. I started my own blog called Bleed Philly. And, I found Vaughn on Twitter, and we just kind of shared that, wrestling bond right away. So we communicated, and he actually had the idea to start the podcast back in 2015. I think in the summer, we just kind of went to the studio, did a demo, and had some great chemistry. So since then, almost every single week, I think we're up to 100 episodes. It might be 161, but we, even during, the holidays, I know it's rough for both of us, but we try to put out a product that we think is, entertaining. We focus mainly on WWE because we know that's what the majority of our listeners care about. We do dabble in, the independent scene. We've had Anthony Bennett on our show, who was in the Cruiserweight Classic, but he was also training at the Monster Factory and here in Paulsboro, New Jersey, which was close to where I grew up. So a lot of local connections to our show. But Vaughn's now moved on to the Philadelphia Eagles. He works for them, the social media aspect. So we decided to still do the podcast. He's been there for almost a year now, and we've been continuing the podcast, and we have a great time doing it once a week. It's basically any big wrestling news that happens, we try to hit on it, whether it be WWE or Ring of Honor, New Japan, Impact, the independents, the United Kingdom scene that came on strong the last couple of years. The Mae Young Classic, we've had live commentary episodes before. I love Bruce Pritchard and his podcast, but we did, live commentary stuff before those podcasts even started. Shout out to Bruce Pritchard and Conrad Thompson. I love their show and a lot of the other ones, but so we just try to have fun with it, and I hope it comes across to the listener. We've got some good feedback over the years, and we don't seem like it's gonna stop anytime soon.
Yeah, that's good. I know, especially in the pro wrestling realm, there's literally a podcast about a podcast about a podcast, and a lot of them can be, I guess, cringeworthy at best. I know, I kind of go in and out with Pritchard and Conrad. I think we've talked about it before. Sometimes it's cool, sometimes it's kind of cringeworthy. But I will say, you guys, you and Vaughn, you definitely make wrestling fun. You guys have a really good chemistry, and it's something to where I can listen to it, and it feels like it's just two regular guys talking about wrestling, not, two guys trying to outsmart the business or, overanalyze the fourth Brock Lesnar power slam. So I appreciate that definitely, because again, I think you can find a podcast about anything nowadays, and I just think that a lot of them sometimes can get watered down, but you guys make it fun. You guys make it something that's enjoyable. So I do check you guys out as often as I can. So, you guys do a lot of good work with that.
I can speak for Vaughn. We appreciate that. And that's kind of what we hope that other people also are kind of taking in, that we don't try to get too insidery, and anything like that. Like, yeah, we understand how the business works in general terms. We haven't been inside the business. We're media people that cover the business, but we're not a Dave Meltzer. We're not anyone like that. We're fans first and foremost. So we try to also give us the standpoint of a fan, kind of like what we enjoy and what we don't enjoy. And this summer was kind of brutal, because I hated. Well, I shouldn't say hated, but I was very underwhelmed with WrestleMania and everything that came after that. This past year, up until SummerSlam, I thought SummerSlam was a very good event, and that kind of rekindled, I guess, a little desire in me to continue watching every single week, because especially with WWE television, you can miss a program and not miss anything. So it's especially tough this year, I think, for me personally, to really be as big a fan. But, like, I love the podcast. I love doing it with Vaughn. We have some guests here and there. It's fun. So, if I'm not feeling a certain wrestling, period of time like I have this year, I still enjoy it for what it's worth.
Yeah, and I think that's something that I've kind of experienced too. Like, I'm 34. I think we're roughly around around the same age, me, you, and Vaughn. And I found it, at least for me, it's really difficult to carve out a weekly demand that WWE has. Like, you're really asking for 7 hours a week of wrestling. And the hard part for me, and I've said this in tweets and in different columns that I've written, I feel like, currently WWE has the most talented in-ring product, but the least interesting wrestling characters that they've had in quite some time. So I'm right there with you. WrestleMania was exhausting, to say the least. Like, I couldn't imagine, I had a couple buddies that were there, and I just asked them, like, how did you feel afterwards? And they were like, we didn't really care what happened. We just wanted the show to end. And I think that was the common theme. And, they did take a bit of a dip, and, I'm glad to see that they've moved away from Brock, so to speak, and they're going to focus on Roman. And I hope that opens a lot of doors. I may be in the adult minority in this, but I'm a huge Roman Reigns fan. I know some people really love him, some people don't, but I enjoy what he brings to the product on a weekly basis.
Yeah, and I never, even when John Cena, like a decade ago, was getting just completely booed out of the building by the crowd, I was never that type of fan. Like, Roman Reigns has great tools. He showed he can be the guy, the face of the company. It's just how they book him and how they make him look that turns people off. And I understand some fans don't like, a guy being shoved down their throat. But in this particular instance, I don't think the people that feel that way about Reigns are justified in that. He is entertaining when he's given some, creative freedom, because he's definitely not the same character that he's been since they started this face, push to the top face of WWE, the good old baby face. Like, he lost his bad, and then people were turned off. People were cheering for him to eliminate Batista back in 2014 when Daniel Bryan didn't come out.
Yes.
So, you know, WWE completely botched him throughout the last few years. Do I think they're doing a better job with him now? Absolutely. And hopefully it continues with the surge of Braun Strowman and the fact that the fans are so behind him. I wanted to kind of see if they would give him the shot, but it's a company. People kind of forget that they're there to make money, and if Reigns makes them more money than they think Braun would, that's their decision to make, and the fans don't have to like it. But I understand where they're coming from, but I think too many of them don't give Reigns a chance when I think they should. And so I'm with you. Like, I'm a big Reigns fan. He's entertaining. He has good matches. You know, John Cena could wrestle, but they never like showed it off. And when John Cena was at the top, that in-ring product was not great. And you mentioned it earlier. Now it really is. It's probably one of the best eras of the in-ring aspect that we've seen in quite a long time. And I like that. And Reigns, he's the guy, and I want to see them honestly give him the reins, no pun intended, and not kind of water him down like they did before.
Yeah, I think that, one of the things that is changing rapidly, and I think this started with the WWE Network, and I think, with both of us as lifelong fans, we sort of grew up with the different structure of how WWE was, as far as like on a weekly basis, storylines would develop a little bit more consistently. But I think that has to do a lot with, when we were in our teens, or when we were even, before that, or even into our 20s, WWE had to sell a product that you would spend, $40 to $60 on a monthly basis. So there was probably a little bit more desire to present a product that you'd be willing to spend, almost $600 a year on. Whereas now you're spending $9.99 on the network. If you don't like the current product, you've got the whole library of stuff you don't have, you don't have to watch the current product. Like, I think Hell in a Cell is coming next week, and I forgot it was coming right around the corner. And I know that if I miss it, it's not the end of the world, because I can go back and watch it. So there's not that desire to where like, oh, I have to spend $40 on this 3-hour product that I'm only going to get a chance to watch once. And I think, in now with the current product, I'm a big fan of Reigns. I think one thing that has been missing from him in the past, like you said, I think he's been botched to where I've never really felt like being the top guy mattered, in a sense to where, you'd watch Cena, or you'd watch, Punk, or you'd watch Daniel Bryan. You felt that emotion come through the television screen about how, they wanted to be the champ, or being the top guy was the best thing. So you kind of felt that range of emotion. You felt the really, really good, or the passionate Cena promos, like whether you like Cena or not. And I wasn't a Cena fan till about WrestleMania 27, 20. And I think that's when his in-ring wrestling got a lot better, at the US Open challenges, the feuds with Punk, and, the stuff he did with The Rock, whether or not those matches really delivered or not, but just the promo work and all that, you've kind of felt that range of emotions with the top guys. And I think that's something that's missing with Reigns. And I think it's because he was handicapped by, Brock Lesnar coming in and out, because essentially Brock had a deal that, at 31, I think that was actually their best match. And I understood the ending, how it made sense with having Rollins cash in. But I mean, WrestleMania 32, they tried to book him a la that Daniel Bryan underdog. And, Reigns is not going to be accepted as your Daniel Bryan type underdog.
Right.
And then, 33, I think, him and Taker he got the best match he could out of Undertaker. Like, I've been very public on the fact that if I never see him wrestle again, I'm good with it. I thought he should have ended it at WrestleMania 30, but it's wrestling. These things never really go away. But even at 34, I just wonder, if they've missed too many opportunities to make him the guy by pinning Lesnar the right way. But, come hell or high water, they got the belt off of him. I'm a big fan of them. I like what they're doing now with the Shield. I want to give the Braun Strowman heel turn a little bit more time to develop before I have an opinion on it. Mm-hmm. But, a lot of this stuff now, I just find myself watching as much as I can, but it's really hard to get through 7 hours of that product on a weekly basis.
Yeah, I completely agree. And you said it perfectly with the WWE Network. I grew up on that stuff, and I love going back and watching it, and even kind of studying it to see what things that I missed. I understood how to follow a story, but there were still like certain subtle things that you miss even today, and what they do. So I think it's really cool to kind of go back and watch and see how things play out. And I even find myself on YouTube searching old shows that aren't on the network. I've said on the Straight Shooters many times how much of a fan I was of Livewire back in the day. And
I think
he started. They had a bunch of hosts in the beginning.
Right. Okay, I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
Doc Hendricks. They even had Vince Russo on there as Vic Venom.
Yep.
Sonny was on there a lot. Even Vince McMahon hosted. So it was very different. It was 1996, so I was about 11 or about to turn 11 when they started that show. So I still was young and didn't really understand that it was completely fake. Well, I shouldn't say fake, predetermined. Because I get on people that say wrestling's fake too. So why would I say it? Things like Mania. They had some Mania exclusives in there. I like watching that stuff. I don't know why. Maybe it's because it's nostalgic, but it reminds me that there's a reason why I love wrestling, and that even though a Saturday morning 1 hour block, that a show that's inconsequential in the grand scheme of my life, it's a reminder of why I love wrestling. So, and sometimes that's all I need.
Yeah, and I know I have a second job now, but at that second job, I work the desk at a gym, and I found a way to stream the network on their work computer. No one from my gym's gonna listen to this. And they all know what I do it. They all know I do it anyway. But I started Raw on episode 1, and I think I'm up to episode like 520. So I'm right around like 2003, around like the debut of Goldberg, and Triple H was being Ric Flair Jr. And you go back and watch some of that stuff, and it doesn't hold up, but it's just fun to see the development of like a Jericho, or it's the development of an Edge, or like the debut of guys that you might have forgotten of, like, Lance Cage, stuff like that. And even going back further than that, I think we joked about this before, talking about the Ica Pro era, and just going back and watching like the intro promo packages to some of those pay-per-views, like those random in your houses, and you realize how much those used to get you so excited for whatever the pay-per-view is going to be. And it's fun to have that sort of library at your disposal as a WWE fan.
Yeah, I completely agree.
So I know we're coming off the heels of All In. For those who don't know, that was the Cody Rhodes and the Young Bucks independent show that was in Chicago. Cody Rhodes defeated Nick Aldis for the NWA Championship. I want to get your thoughts on All In before I give mine. What did you get a chance to watch it? What were your thoughts about the product itself or independent wrestling with what they did?
So when they announced the event for September 1st, I was all about it. I was like, man, I'm going to watch this live. I actually talked about it on the Straight Shooters last week, and I placed the order during our recording, but I wound up canceling it because I was like, I'll just watch it online instead of pay for the cable, and it'd be like $20 or $30 more. I have not watched the entire show. I've seen highlights, just because during the day we just started the school year. I work at a school, so I haven't found a good time to just sit down and watch it. But it is on the docket. I did read the results, and I did see the feedback of the pay-per-view, and I've seen many good things, and that's what I wanted to see. Honestly, like I'm not here as a wrestling fan who talks mainly about WWE on his podcast to, you know, look down on a show like this. I think my last recording with Vaughn on the Straight Shooters, we previewed the entire show, and we talked about All In, our entire episode. So we both, me and Vaughn, wanted it to succeed. I wanted to see, and I'm really glad. And I've said before, wrestling, it can be so predictable, but sometimes predictable is a good thing. And Cody Rhodes winning the NWA title might be the most predictable thing to come out of that night, but it might have been the best thing too, because just seeing, you know, the picture, and then on Twitter you have, you know, people posting the picture of Dusty with the NWA title, and then Cody with the NWA title. That's another reason, you know, it's not just me going on YouTube looking up old videos that remind me why I love wrestling. It's stuff like that reminds me why I love wrestling. And I can't, you know, older now, have more responsibilities, so I can't put a block of 4 hours, I think, All In. And,
I think it was about that, yeah, 3.5 to
okay.
3 to 4.
So and I honestly think I have some type of attention thing. I can barely go see a movie in a theater because I can't sit there and like for more than 2 or 2.5 hours. So I think it has something to do with that, which is also a tell with WWE pay-per-views. I can barely, I don't know how I do it, honestly. Probably because I recap them for Philly Voice, but you know, see the in-ring action, you know, from what I read was great. Kind of soured on them only having one women's match. I thought they could have done more with that, but I'm not behind the scenes. I don't know if there was a reason for that. I don't know if they obviously could have tried to have more women on the show, and maybe it just didn't work out with the planning. I don't know. So I don't want to assume anything, but I would have liked to have seen, you know, maybe 3 women's matches at least. The match placement was kind of weird because I know Cody winning wasn't the main event, but might have been a good thing because I think they cut the main event. It was like really short, at the 6-man. So, but you know, that was one that I was really excited to watch. And even though it was short, I still read some really great things about it. And I love Mysterio might be in the best shape of his life. I was at the Royal Rumble when he made the surprise appearance in Philly back in January, and he looked phenomenal. And I would love to see him come back to WWE for another run, a good run, not something to where we're going to remember him almost like we remember The Undertaker from the Roman Reigns match. And I am glad that that's not going to be Undertaker's last memory for me.
With the stumbling on that transition.
Yeah. So, you know, Mysterio, like I'm just excited to see him back. So, you know, I'm looking forward to watching the whole show in one sitting, hopefully soon. You know, we have the Eagles tomorrow, so I'm hoping maybe this weekend sometime.
Yeah, I know. I was at work on Saturday when it was on, so I was kind of following the results on Twitter, and you know, wrestling fans in themselves can kind of be snarky when it comes to certain things. It's one of the few genres I know where like people deliberately try to poke the fun out of something.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
You know, I've gone on record. I'm not the biggest fan of Cody in the ring. But I can separate that from I respect what he's doing as far as making independent wrestling more relevant. I think he single-handedly and All In made the NWA title as relevant as it's been probably since it came back in TNA when TNA first started back in like the early 2000s. So I hope these guys do really well just because it opens up more doors. I think that, you know, Cody has... you know, he superseded my expectations of, I didn't know if he was just going to be your next, you know, ex-WWE guy charging $40 for an 8x10 at your local armory and, you know, getting on Twitter and having a podcast and then bashing the business and having it be sponsored by Blue Apron. But, you know, I I'm not going to sit here and say I'm the biggest fan of the stuff that he does in the ring, but I was happy to see All In be successful. I was happy to see all the guys and girls have an opportunity to showcase their talent. And I appreciate what Cody and the Young Bucks did. I know there was, he's doing a lot for independent wrestling, and he's showing how to make a career outside of WWE, which I think is something that has not always gone well once you've left sort of the empire. So I'm glad to see him. I'm glad to see him doing well. I've followed the results on All In, and if he can make the NWA Championship matter, more power to him. And I think he's done that with just winning the belt. And like you said, it was kind of predictable he was going to get the belt, and I kind of expected the Cody and Dusty picture side by side. But even seeing it on social media, I was like, man, that's really cool. Like, you can tell that matters to him, and I think that's something that's missing in WWE. That vulnerability of the chase and that triumph. And I think that was something they missed with, Reigns dethroning Brock recently is, they told an excellent story of Cody winning that belt. And I think that was something that, even as I'm not a huge fan of him in the ring, I could appreciate and, enjoy what he did for that match.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the main difference, and maybe it's obvious to some, but it's almost like I had an epiphany the past few years. Independent wrestling, they organically built champions and people that get over themselves. They listen to the crowd. Mm-hmm. WWE tries to manipulate the crowd. While I understand that, like, they're the biggest wrestling company in the world. Maybe I shouldn't even say wrestling, because they probably don't even think they're a wrestling company. But to me, they are. So they manipulate the crowd to have the crowd give the reaction they want. It doesn't always happen, and it's clearly not happening with Roman Reigns, even with Braun Strowman's heel turn. Mm-hmm. But with the Cody win and everything, even though, like, he's been, like, acted as a heel and a face ever since he left WWE, so it's hard to gauge where he's coming from sometimes. I guess it all depends on the promo he gives. Yes. And but the fans, if they buy into it and they have a legit emotional reaction to something that happens that's not in New Japan and that's not in WWE, then I think that's awesome, because it still means that wrestling matters. And yes. Cody, I mean, I understand he's not the best in-ring worker, but if he can elicit the reaction, let's be honest, neither is Roman Reigns, but mm-hmm. if they can elicit the reaction of the crowd, I think that matters more in 2018 than in-ring ability. We see Daniel Bryan right now. He's getting big reactions, and obviously he's one of the best wrestlers in the world, but he's going to have to, if he wants the longevity that he says he does, I still think he's going to have to change his style. So he might not, maybe in a year or two, his in-ring style might look completely different than it does now. I think it should. Not that it would be necessarily a bad thing, but those drop kicks off the top rope, that they kill me, man. They kill me every time I see him do it, mm-hmm. when he lands on his back. So that obviously was an aside, going off on a little tangent there, but I just want to have wrestling fans care about wrestling, and that's what this event did. And maybe it was put over a little bit, like, over the top, because it was something that we haven't seen. So I think that's part of it. When Meltzer, I think he was, like, going off about how great it was, and people were kind of like, all right, like, it was good, but, like, relax, dude. So kind of like that, where they might be overhyping it a little bit. But I understand why, just because it's historical, and the fact that it went off with basically no hitches was a really good thing for them. Now, I do think Ring of Honor played a role in the production. Doesn't mean it was a bad thing. I think that's really smart. But Ring of Honor is not an independent company. So when they say, and there was a lot of Ring of Honor talent in there and Impact talent in there. So when they say it's the world's biggest independent wrestling show, I think that was show ever. That was like their tagline. I kind of laughed at it, and I was like, to me, it wasn't an independent show, but it was something that was lower key. It was almost like WWE, like saying, "This is what it is, and you're going to take it." And like the 25th anniversary of WrestleMania, the way they made it, like it wasn't the 25th anniversary; it was the 24th or 26th. I forget which one. It was WrestleMania 25. It wasn't the 25th anniversary, but the way they did that. So that was what All In did with the whole biggest independent wrestling show ever thing. But you know what? Like, to me, it's grasping at straws. If people want to be negative about it, I'm not trying to be negative about it, but I think maybe not enough people talked about that heading into the pay-per-view and coming out of the pay-per-view. So I think it's important to note that if Ring of Honor played a role in it, that's fine. But it just seemed like nobody wanted to go down that road.
Yeah, it was something that I think it's an interesting event for wrestling fans, because I do think it was, in a sense, what New Japan is from a global standpoint, to where it's an alternative to the WWE product. Mm-hmm. And I think that, you know, there's a certain fan base that's become so disenfranchised with WWE, you know, right, wrong, or indifferently, that they just want something different. And it takes me back kind of to that Ico Pro era that we talked about, to where that's sort of what allowed ECW to flourish. Now, I'm not comparing, you know, ECW to All In, but I do think that there is a difference between, I think there's similarities between now to where, you know, fans want something different. They want to feel like they're a part of this sort of underground music group that is rebelling against counterculture. And I think that's what All In represented for a big portion of wrestling fans. So again, like I wish these guys well. I'd be lying if I said that it was appointment viewing for me, but I understand that it does allow for alternatives in North America, the same way that New Japan is an alternative now to WWE, and especially with, you know, 2018 with your New Japan World, or a lot of people are getting into, you know, New Japan or All Japan or Progress or, you know, AAA or Ring of Honor or whatever, how we all have access to that stuff through social media. Like I could become a huge New Japan fan just by following 10 people on Twitter that love it, and then I'm branching off of that and off of that. So I think we all now have alternatives, and I think in North America, if All In represents an alternative for fans who may not like WWE, that's great. I don't think it's going to push WWE to change the product the way ECW did, but I do think there are parallels to where it's sort of that underground alternative that I think when you have fans that are disenfranchised with a certain product, that's kind of what they're looking for.
Yeah, and it kind of, to me, maybe WWE's, the way they change is by signing that talent.
Yeah.
You know, the way they did with Nakamura and Styles and Gallows and Anderson, and you kind of see Styles as the standout right now. And to them, it doesn't matter how they book these other guys. It's just to have them. And I hope they eventually start caring about how their fans view these guys. If they love them, you know, push them. Mm-hmm. You know, don't make them a comedy act. Don't have them in a main title feud and lose every single match and give low blows to everyone like every single time. Like,
yeah,
I get like they're building a story, but like it's a shitty story, man. Like, come on, like you can't come up with anything better. And I think that's the main gripe I had with that whole Nakamura Styles feud. It's like there's so much more to it that could be, and it's frustrating when WWE, like we as fans, we obviously feel like the creative, sometimes the best creative way to do things. And I'm guilty of it. And I do it a lot on the podcast. I'm like, I would do this, so I would do that. Mm-hmm. But I understand that's not the name of the game. And I understand that just because I like something, the masses aren't going to like the same thing. But yeah, that just the whole Nakamura thing, it gets me. It just gets me. So
yeah,
WWE needs to change their booking philosophies, and I think that's the biggest issue with a lot of fans now. Like, you had mentioned it earlier, the in-ring product's great, but the characters are not, and that needs to be fixed.
I agree. So I want to transition from WWE to something else that we're both passionate about, and that is the world champion of the universe, world, galaxy, Philadelphia Eagles. I want to back up from week one. I think we'll get there momentarily, but Wentz's injury, I want to start there. Where were you when it happened? What was your initial reaction to it? I want to start with Wentz's injury and then work our way to where we're at today. Where were you when he got hurt?
Okay. So during Eagles games the past few years, I have it on my computer and I watch it on TV, and my computer is a little bit behind. So I've captured some videos from games. I post them on Twitter, at Nick Pacone on Twitter and at PHL_influencer. Certain plays from the game that might be, I don't do some random running plays or passing plays that aren't like consequential, but big plays. I will, like game-changing plays on offense and defense. Like I'll, record a video of it on my computer, post it on Twitter, and get the conversation going during Eagles games. So I enjoy watching Eagles games alone for that purpose because I'm not distracted. I do get very emotional during games, so I get angry at maybe dumb things, and when I look back. But to me, I enjoy watching games alone. So when Carson Wentz, he got tackled, he got crunched, like his legs just got crunched by two defenders, and I know they said that maybe he tore it before that happened, but when I saw that tackle, like I kind of grabbed my chair a little bit. I was like, oh no. So I continued watching. The announcers made no mention of it because Wentz got up and he walked back to the huddle. Meanwhile, on a torn ACL. I think he ran two more plays. The last one was like a running play, or the next one was a running play. And I think the one after that was the touchdown pass to Jeffrey.
Yeah, that was Alshon Jeffrey, yeah.
Yeah. And it's when he did not move from the pocket while he was looking to pass, I knew something was wrong because he had a lane. He had a lane that he could have ran in if he was not hurt. And once he didn't run in, I was like, oh no, this is bad. And they had him walk. They showed him walking to the tunnel. Zach Ertz was with him. I thought their season was done, honestly, and I don't think I did any videos the rest of that game because I was so upset that our incredible season. I think it was the first or second week of December. So up until that point, incredible season. We had 3 or 4 games left, and that had to happen. Almost clinching a playoff spot. Like we kind of knew we were going to be in the playoffs, and I just fear the worst. I always fear the worst because it helps me not be let down when it comes through. But nobody in the media and nobody from the team confirmed anything that day or night. Wentz was walking on the leg, I think, in an air cast. And some people that were in the area were like, oh, like maybe that's a good sign. So I kind of got a little, happy. I was like, oh, like maybe it's not as bad. Maybe it'll be maybe he'll be back for the playoffs. Like, who knows? And then the next day I got an alert when I was at work, that it was official that he tore his ACL. So, yeah, I thought it was over. I'm not saying I didn't have faith in Nick Foles because I loved that they brought him back last year as the backup. I thought he was a better backup than Chase Daniel. I never was a fan of Chase Daniel, and I'm glad Chase asked for a trade. I think it was after Wentz's first season or something like that. But one of those things where my heart just sunk. Like I couldn't eat that day. Like that's how much it affected me. And just looking at the whole what happened, I guess we'll get to that. So I don't want to jump ahead, but yeah, I thought it was over. Like me and my my friend at work, he's a season ticket holder. He was like, "Oh, they're done." Like he was like, "I'll still go to the games, but they're done." So nobody around me had a sense of optimism, obviously, when Wentz went down.
Yeah, that's pretty much. I was that weekend. My fiance and I were actually in Southern California because we went to Disneyland, and we had thought about. I had thought about going to that game, but those tickets were getting really high because those were two of the top teams in the NFC at the time. And I remember sitting in the hotel room in Anaheim watching the injury, and I was like, "Oh, they did it to me again." Because as being a fan of this team my whole life, I'm just kind of turned into a pessimist when it comes to this stuff because, every year they find a way. They find a way to break your heart every year. Like I remember recently, or, a couple of years ago, there was the Michael Vick interception where he threw the fade to Riley Cooper, or there was the one against Arizona when they were down, and then McNabb had the ball and Kevin Curtis missed a pass, and I've just learned over the years to don't let them break your heart again. And I remember being in the hotel room, I'm like, damn, they did it to me again. Like they tricked me again. Like I thought, because I was riding high on this Wentz thing. I was like, this guy is amazing. He's everything. And the thing I liked about Wentz that I think is a plague with most quarterbacks nowadays is, to me, Wentz is looking to beat you, where I think a lot of other quarterbacks are looking just not to mess it up. And that was something that I loved about Wentz and Peterson was their aggressive offensive play calling. The going for it on the fourth downs, which we'll get to in a little bit, but just that desire to I'm going to trust my 11 guys to get 2 yards on a fourth down because they're better than you. And I love that sort of play calling. Mm-hmm. But I remember we were walking through Disneyland. And every time we walked by this one spot in Disneyland, I always remember where I was when I got the alert that everything was torn. And I was like, damn, I looked at it, I was like, they got me again. I thought it could happen. I thought this was going to be the year, and they got me again. They tricked me. So, she's a lifelong Warrior fan, not like a lot of people now that are kind of bandwagon fans. She has been a Warrior fan her whole life. So to see her kind of go through the success of winning these titles, she was sitting there being like, you got to have faith, you got to just believe. And I'm saying look, I've watched McNabb, I've watched Cobb, I've watched Cunningham, I've watched every Detmer known to man. It's hard for me to have faith in this team because they break your heart every year. And then I remember the Christmas game, and it was against the Raiders, and I wasn't a huge Foles fan. I'm not going to lie. I didn't have faith in Nick Foles until Brady's Hail Mary hit the ground. We'll get to that one in a second. But, that Raider game, I was like, okay, I'm going to give the guy a chance. And it just looked like the most conservative, pedestrian, 17 for 20 for 100-yard passing game that you could have had. I remember one of the Raider cornerbacks dropped a surefire pick six.
Yeah.
I was like, damn, they did it again. They squeaked out that win. And then there was the game against the Cowboys where I was like, nah, okay, whatever. The game didn't really count.
Right.
And then I actually just rewatched the Falcon game, I want to say yesterday or over the weekend because it was on NFL Network. And even the beginning of that game, Foles did not look impressive really at many points in the beginning of that game, at least. Now, obviously, they won, but I still remember that last play when it was Mills on Julio Jones. And I'm sitting there Julio Jones has to catch this because it's how it always happens. I got my heart broken, and then I kind of built myself back up to this lead in the NFC playoffs. But of course, somehow Julio Jones has to catch this ball. And then, it went through his hands or Matt Ryan overthrew him. And I'm like, okay, that's all right, cool. NFC, all right, NFC championship game. That's pretty cool. And then I remembered again where I was. It was the Minnesota Miracle when Diggs caught the pass. Because I told everyone who was listening, I was like, I don't think they can beat the Saints, but I don't think the Vikings are legit because I thought eventually Case Keenum has to be, Case Keenum. He's Case Keenum for a reason. So when Diggs bent that corner and scored, I looked at her and I was like, yo, we can beat Minnesota. But still, the week leading up to it, I didn't trust that Foles could beat a team. And that was my biggest concern, was that I don't think he would lose the game, but I don't think he would go out and win it. And boy, was I wrong.
Yeah, first thought, I completely agree with you. I didn't think that he would be the reason they would win. It would have to be their defense, and he would have to make sure they didn't lose.
Yeah.
But when he came in for the Rams game and he led them on that drive and wound up winning the game, I thought that showed me a little something. I was like, all right, not bad. And I think the next week was the Giants game, and that was like a shootout. And their Eagles defense looked terrible, but and the Eagles Giants always play close games no matter what. It's either an ugly game that's close or it's like a shootout. And earlier in this year, the 61-yarder by Jake Elliott, like, it wasn't exactly a pretty game, and the Eagles could have fell to 1-2, and it might be a different story after that. But this game was almost the complete opposite. It's like everybody was scoring, and Foles looked good. And I know people were bullish on the Giants' defense. It's like, well, their defense isn't even good, so of course Foles would be good against them. But to me, he was good against the Rams' defense when he came in, and they were among the best defenses in the league. So it had to give him confidence to, even though it was the Giants' defense, like, he still made the plays that he needed to make in order for the Eagles to get a win. And then the Raiders game happened the week after, and it was on Christmas night, and it didn't, like, I was annoyed that he looked bad and really the team, but I took into account it was Christmas night, and it was a short week. It was a Thursday night, I think. Right? I think it was Thursday night.
Thursday, or I'm thinking either Thursday.
Yeah.
No, it was on Christmas Day, because I remember watching Golden State and Cleveland that day.
Yeah, Thursday, right?
I think it
was a Thursday. It was a short week either way, and it's hard enough to prepare for a short week, but then it's hard enough for me to, if it's not Thanksgiving, like, I guess Thanksgiving's a different kind of preparation, but Christmas night, where they're not going to, it's not the same as like a Thanksgiving game to prepare on a short week. So I was glad they won. I wanted them to win, but Foles' struggles in that game didn't stand out to me. I kind of like forgot about it after. I was like, you know what? It's whatever. And then the first half of the Falcons game and the playoffs, I was like, oh man, like, this is the Foles we're going to get.
Yeah.
And then, the second half, he turned it on when he needed to. They only scored 15 points, but, those were 15 hard points, because that Falcons defense is tough, regardless of what anyone thinks about him. I think Foles did a great job in that. And then when Minnesota went ahead in the NFC Championship game right away, that was me, Tampa Bay game in 2002, when the Eagles scored first, but then they completely, shit the bed after that. And I was like, oh, well, now they're going to shit the bed early. That's cool. And once Patrick Robinson intercepted that, Chris Long, I think, hit Case Keenum's arm, and Robinson got the interception and ran it back. I was like, all right. And, it was that at that moment, because I think Minnesota was driving on the next possession they had, but it was Patrick Robinson's interception return. I was like, all right, Foles is going to do this. He's going to put us, like, I just look back to the Falcons game. I was like, they'll adjust, because the biggest pet peeve I had with Andy Reid was that he never seemed to adjust during the game. He had a great game plan, but in the middle of the game, you would just see the same damn thing, and you would see no adjustments. And that infuriated me. And Doug had shown that he can adjust in game during the course of the season, I think. Even the Kansas City game in week 2, that it looked like Kansas City was going to blow them out, but they actually made it a one possession game at some point. Yeah. So I gave him, I gave Doug credit for that. and then, obviously it was off to the races, 38-7, one of the best NFC championship games I've ever seen.
Yeah, that was up there for me.
Yeah. And it was, after that, dude, I swear, you could ask anyone that was around me. I understand the Patriots have that, or they're not, Bill Belichick, Tom Brady, they're going to be favorites no matter what. And people are going to be like, oh, well, hopefully the Eagles can beat them. I had this confidence that they were. I swear I told it. And not like, I wasn't cocky about it. I was like, oh, the Eagles are going to win this game. And Nick Foles is going to be the reason why. And maybe I didn't respect the Patriots defense, and maybe that made me feel extra good about Nick Foles. But I was like, Doug's going to put – and I love Frank Reich and Joe DiFilippo. Like, I think that was why Nick Foles became what he did in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be interesting to see him, without them. But I think Doug has proven he's smart. He's smart enough to not show anything in preseason. So this preseason doesn't mean anything to me. Last preseason, they didn't look that great, and they won the Super Bowl. So I think Doug has a plan. I think he knew that Wentz was never going to start week 1, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with him not starting, the first month, if it takes that long, just to make sure he's 110%. We'll put it that. But and that's what winning the Super Bowl does. Like, it gave me confidence in Doug. I trust his decision making, because we've seen some crazy decisions by him, even in his first year coaching. We kind of chalk that up to first year inexperience, but he came back last year, and I'm sure he had people in his ear, but he's the one who makes the final call, and he had some great play calls through the course of the season, not obviously the Philly specials. So I think Doug deserves a lot of credit for Foles' success, and I'm okay with, I'm not afraid of Nick Foles the way I think some Eagles fans around this area in Philly are.
Yeah, I remember. I remember watching the Super Bowl, and I remember after we beat the Vikings, I watched that movie Miracle with Kurt Russell about the 1980 hockey team, and they were talking about how teams play, how the U.S. team wasn't going to play Russia scared, like they were going to attack them. And I remember thinking, I'm like, that's Doug Peterson. We're not going to back down to the Patriots. We're going to try. We have to go and beat them. We don't have to try to hang with them. We have to try to beat them. And I was pretty confident the weeks leading up to it. I was like, okay, I feel good. I think they can do it. And even before, when the game started, that's when I started to get kind of the nervous jitters. And I didn't sit down the whole game. I just was a funnel of just Cheez-Its and Jack Daniels, and I couldn't sit still. I couldn't do – I was good. The Philly special obviously goes down in history, and I just love having a coach that is that aggressive and is that willing to bet on his own guys. Now, it works. If it works, you're a genius. If it doesn't work, you're an idiot. Yeah. But even the fourth down to Zach Ertz too, towards the end of the game, that was another huge play where you got to trust your guys to get 3 or 4 yards, and I think stuff like that goes a long way. And I just remember even when Brady hit Amendola on that crossing route, I was like, oh no, here it goes. They're going to do it. And then even when the Hail Mary went up, it took me a second to register that the game was over. Cause to me, it felt like there was still a second or two left. And I was like, wait, is it done? It's over, it's done. And I did the same thing. I had no reaction because I'm like, all right, well, hopefully they stop him on the next play. Yeah. And then I forget who it was. It might've been Ronald Darby put his arms in the air, celebrating. I'm like, wait, what? And then I looked at the time and it said 0. And I'm staring at the TV, just waiting for reactions. Is the game really over? Are we going to, did this really happen? I remember thinking I'm scared to celebrate. So I'm like, it's done, right? And I'd expected like this huge dramatic moment to where like we kneel on the ball and I can like run around and be hugely excited. Then it was just this weird. It had to end that way to where it's like, wait, like we can feel good now. Like we really did this. And yeah, that was
no flags, no flags,
no flags, no nothing, nothing weird happened. It was I can't speak for you, man, but it was the best I've ever felt watching sports in my entire life. And it's something that I've been living off this high for about 7 months now. So
yeah, man. Me too. And I did the same exact thing for the Falcons game, the Vikings game, and the Super Bowl. I went over to my buddy's house. We wore the same exact clothes. We sat in the same exact seats. Ordered the same exact food. We had not every the first week somebody else was there, and then the second week somebody new was there, and then the third week and the Super Bowl there was like a couple random people there, but me and my buddy were like, nope, we're doing this. And we had our superstitions, and I think the Eagles won the Super Bowl simply because of us.
Yeah, no, I was the amount of Cheez-Its and whiskey I consumed that day definitely propelled them to that Super Bowl. That is for sure. Because I couldn't sit down. I'm generally pretty subdued when I watch the games, like either at a bar or like with friends or family, just because like I am pretty passionate about it, and I've got to learn over the years to sort of control that. And I watched it at my future in-laws' house, and dude, when Amendola caught that crossing route, I think it was like on the third or fourth down, I forgot where I was, and I just slammed my hands down on the carpet and just yelled like the biggest like expletive I could have. And then like as I did, I was like, oh shit, like oh wait, I gotta like I can't really do that. But yeah, man, it was the best I had ever felt watching sports. Now you were at the parade, correct?
I was sick that day, of course. But I did call out of work before that. So I had the day off anyway.
Okay.
So I did go to the entrance of where the buses left the Link parking lot.
Okay.
But I had buddies up near the art museum or like up along that road. So when all the buses left, I wound up going home and watching it on TV. So I got back in time to see Jason Kelce's speech, and I was glad I did because that kind of blew up on Twitter, and I got the video of that and everything. So I was able to put that up on my site, and so it kind of worked out for me going home and not being there for the entire thing.
So what, obviously, because I'm in California, like even after they won, we had looked at plane tickets, and just tickets and hotel were outrageous. Like it was going to be about, $1,200 before we even got off the plane in Philadelphia. But what, because I obviously wasn't there, and I've always wanted to know this, like what was, like, how would you describe the city that week that they won that leading to the parade?
Oh man. It was probably like nobody was pissed at anything. If you cut someone off in traffic, it wouldn't piss you off. You see an Eagle sticker, you're like, all right, he's fine. And let me tell you, driving to work every morning, I deal with these crazy drivers in PA, man. They're nuts. So I dealt with that quite a bit. And it was just, we were just kind of waiting for the parade, it was waiting for, we were celebrating, but it was a party. Like the parade became the biggest party in Philly. We had the drafts the previous year in April of 2017. So that was really awesome. Like I had gone down there for that, and I thought that was probably one of the coolest things that I had been a part of. And I was kind of expecting the same type of atmosphere, but it was so much better because like it wasn't just the NFL draft. It was the Eagles won the damn Super Bowl, and we had people, standing on top of buildings on Broad Street, sitting on, churches, and people were being called, like police were being called because people were sitting on churches. Like my cousin she actually posted the picture. My cousin was actually up there. I'm not sure if it's the same picture that was shared on social media. Some of the news outlets around here picked it up, and she had said that, oh, that looks like my picture, but obviously a ton of people had their phones out, so it might have been the person next to her, maybe like 3 people next to her. But it was just the coolest thing because nobody was mad about anything, and if something crazy happened, it was like, oh, that's Philly for you. Mm-hmm. So there was no shame, no shame at all for anything, and we're doing to celebrate. And like I can't blame them, you know. And I'll tell you though, the next day, I had to go into work, and it might have been the roughest day of the year, but it was well worth it, man. Well worth it.
Yeah, it's that was something I watched. Like I recorded everything that was on NFL Network. I'm recording the America's game that should be on in about an hour.
I am too.
And
it's on right now, my time actually.
It just feels so good, like to see the team that I grew up watching. And I had made a bet with my friends about if they had won this, because after Wentz got hurt, like they knew I was just went into just total pessimism mode. And
yeah.
They told me, they're like, all right, if they win, like you've got to get the tattoo and you've got to get a Foles jersey. And I was like, yeah, fine, no problem, whatever. And the first text I got from them afterwards is like, all right, when are you getting the tattoo? And on my left arm, it is the biggest conversation starter you will find. It is the Eagles, the Lombardi Trophy, the score, and the date. And it is my favorite tattoo by a mile, too.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I know that
a lot of people get tattoos. Yeah, I knew a lot.
Yeah, they're heading into week 1 tomorrow. I'm going to post this later tonight. They made a couple moves in the offseason, obviously adding Haloti Ngata, Michael Bennett, Mike Wallace, to name a few. What are some of your thoughts on the moves that they've made? And even drafting I'm going to get the guy's last name wrong. Dallas Goedert, Dallas, the new tight end.
I mean, I trust ever since Howie Roseman drafted Carson Wentz, I trust almost everything about him and the team he's put together. Joe Douglas has been instrumental in that. Obviously, I think I thought it was a great hire a couple of years ago when they got him from the Ravens. I think he was with, or maybe he was with a different team at that point. But I know he was with Baltimore. And you know what? A couple of days ago, they released or waived Donald Pumphrey, so that was a miss by Howie, but. You're gonna have those misses, and I think with their running back core, Ajayi in a contract year, Sproles coming back, and Clement, and maybe they have a 4th or 5th one. I'd like to see Josh Adams up there, but I think they kept another one, but I'm not sure if they're going to use all 4. I feel like if they trust the dudes to get the job done during games, I'm going to until they don't. We're not looking at like a Gabe Kapler situation in baseball with the Phillies here, where he doesn't make a change if somebody's not performing. Like I think if somebody's not performing, he's going to make the change. You kind of have to in football. You know, it's not football and baseball are not the same game. You can't go in a slump and then come out of it in football like you can in baseball. So. Michael Bennett, I think it was a great depth signing. The Tim Jernigan injury really hurts. I've even read some reports that have him maybe not playing the entire season because of a back injury. So that, it's not great, but Jim Schwartz, I think, has been a fantastic defensive coordinator. And they're not going to have Nigel Bradham for game 1, but the Falcons have really struggled offensively at the link with Matt Ryan especially. And this isn't the playoffs, and I know every game is different, but during this Falcons Super Bowl year 2 years ago, the Eagles were one of the teams to beat them, and it's when they came to the link, and they did not look like a Super Bowl team at all. So, and they completely dominated them. I mean, like, I have that type of outlook for this specific game. Dallas Goedert, I think, was a great pick because they knew they were losing Trey Burton. And I think he was already gone by that point. Yes. And Burton was a fantastic tight end too. So it's one of those things where they could go 2 tight ends. Maybe Goddard will start out blocking because I know Ertz is a better receiver than a blocker. But you kind of expect that somebody as good as him, Travis Kelce probably doesn't like to block either. Gronk, I mean, he's big, but he's best when he's open and running with the ball. So you got to get Ertz open, see them on the field at the same time using those 2 tight ends. And I know Doug, he's so creative. It's really going to tell me something about him this year. Maybe even tomorrow night, the opener, how creative he is without Frank Reich and Joe DeFilippo. It really showed me a lot about him. Not to say that he's nothing without them, but if he struggles, then maybe you give a little bit more credit to Frank Reich than you would have if, Doug's kind of maybe the loss of Frank Reich and DeFilippo doesn't hurt them. And I'm kind of looking at that. Like, I'm hoping it doesn't hurt them, but I really kind of want to see if they had such a big impact and it wasn't as much Doug. And I mean, I'm not trying to be negative, but I'm just like interested in that. I'm curious. I'm not going to jump down Doug's throat if he struggles, but maybe I should give more credit to Frank Reich and DeFilippo. Who knows?
Yeah, I'm interested to see the development of Nelson Aguilar. I think that's someone that had a good year in that slot role. I know Jeffrey is supposed to be out for the first couple games, so
yeah.
That one I think is going to be a little bit of a challenge. But with them adding Mike Wallace and Goddard as well, like I think if nothing else, that I trust that the guys that are in positions to make an impact on the game will. I'm interested to see what the loss of Vinny Curry, Bo Allen, and then as of right now, Tim Jernigan are to the defensive line. But I do think, them adding Nada, them adding Michael Bennett. I hear good things about Josh Sweat. So I'm interested to see, how that continues to go. And I want to see also, I was really impressed with the corners at the end of the year, Darby and Jalen Mills.
Yeah.
Jalen Mills played incredible. He's one of my favorite players on the current roster right now. So, I like both of them are physical. They take chances. And, moving Sidney Jones into that nickel slot, I think they're talented all across the board. If there's any weakness that I'm concerned about, it's that left tackle spot, because Jason Peters can't do this forever.
Right, yeah.
And, Vaitai didn't look solid in the preseason. I don't know if that's just jitters or what that is. And then the linebacking without Bradham for that first game, I'm interested to see, because a lot of those guys aren't proven, starting linebackers for that team. So I just want to see how all that goes. But I feel confident in them to go out and win any game of the year. And I think that's the best way that you can walk into any kind of season with, if you're a fan of any team, is that, any even Sunday, Monday, or Thursday, we can line up and we can score with any team in the league.
Yeah, I completely agree. And you make a really good point about Peters. And, you can't count on this year having the massive injuries and being able to bounce back from it like they did last year. Mm-hmm. That was another thing where you had so many, maybe a future Hall of Famer, Pro Bowlers get hurt, 5 or 6,
Sproles,
and still win the Super Bowl. Like that is coaching. That is absolutely coaching, and it starts with Doug Peterson. So I'll give him all the credit in the world for that. Like that, I don't think I didn't hear that talked about enough during the preseason. How it's hard to fathom how that happened. Like when I think about it, losing those types of players and having the backup step in and just not miss a beat. I mean, they had, certain plays, Vaitai missed a guy who sacked Wentz. Like, that's going to happen. But just he bounced back from it. and how these guys bounce back from mistakes. It was almost like unworldly, man. Like I still can't believe some of the things I saw and how solid they were after these injuries that we thought were going to ruin the season. Jordan Hicks, can he stay healthy? Like he's been hurt every single year. So I'm looking forward to seeing not more injuries.
No.
Healthy, but we need these guys that have been hurt to have a healthy year. And in football, it's easier said for me to say it than for as a player to go out and do it. But it's just amazing how they rebounded from injuries last year, and you can't count on the same thing happening this year if they have to deal with these injuries.
Yeah, I mean, even with every injury that took place, it always felt like there was someone there. Like, if it wasn't Sproles getting hurt, and that would sort of the catalyst to pick up Ajayi, and then, Corey Clement had his time to shine, and we don't really know. It's been 1 year; it's a small sample with him, but could he be like that Brian Westbrook pass catching sort of running back? Like I thought he did excellent. He was an excellent safety blanket for Foles and towards the end of the year and in the playoffs. And, you got guys like that. And then, Vaitai or Peters, I think that is something that needs to be addressed, soon enough. But we didn't talk about that until later on in the show, where even a guy like Jordan Hicks, that team lost four potential All-Pros, 2 potential Hall of Famers, and a potential MVP. I'll put Sproles and Peters in the Hall of Fame. Yeah. And they weren't able to miss a beat. Like you didn't really feel the loss of any of those guys at any point of the year. So I'm just interested to see, like you said, like when the whole gang's healthy with the exception of Wentz and Jeffrey, and just let them go out there and play and kick this season off. And I think we have one of the best teams in football. And this is probably one of the first seasons where I'm just really excited to go out there and like, all right, we've got a lot of talent here. We've got a lot of young talent too, which I think is important. And we've got them under contract for a while. Let's see what this team can do.
Yeah, and it's crazy that they might completely go. I don't even know how to word it. Like you have to expect injuries too, but what if this is the complete opposite, where like they're healthy the whole season and they don't win the Super Bowl, and then you kind of go, well, what the hell? But like that's what made last season so special, and when I talk about it, like I haven't talked about it in a while, so when I do talk about it, sometimes I run out of words to describe it.
Yeah, it's something that I've been, all my teams, this is really the first team I've been a fan of that has really won anything. Like I'm a Kings fan, I go in and out with the Miami Hurricanes. Like I don't remember them ever winning in 2001 just because that was, 17 years ago. Yeah. I've never seen the Mets win anything of any kind of consequence. So the Philadelphia Eagles are like the first team that I've ever been a fan of to win the whole thing. And just to see like, wow, like this is what the pinnacle feels like. And then you're walking into the next season and like, you can just watch, for me, like I walk around town in Eagles gear and everyone comes up to me and like, Super Bowl champs. And it's like, man, it feels fun. I had a friend of mine who texted me around the time when the game ended. They're like, all right, so you guys are going to go back to back. And I know how hard just getting that one is. And just the fact that we got that one, like it kind of takes the monkey off my back as a fan, being like, man, is this ever going to happen? And it's kind of freeing just going into this year and being like, they've got one of the top teams in the league. And like, I have total trust in Peterson, the offensive line, the receiving core, the running backs. Like I have all the confidence in the world walking into tomorrow with this team.
Yeah. And I tell you, I don't remember a team that when their players got hurt, and they were out for the season, that came back and were like on the sidelines the rest of the year, helping coach the other players. You saw Peters back out there eventually. Wentz, as he was like another quarterback's coach, and that was huge. Like, and people don't bring that up as much as I think they should. He probably helped formulate a game plan. Like imagine what he did after tearing his ACL and coming back into work and helping Nick Foles, and being on the sideline. Like he wasn't, up in the suite and watching, like he was on the sidelines. And I think that has everything to do with that family atmosphere that this team has. And I don't remember seeing, and at least it hasn't been highlighted. And maybe there are teams like that through the years that had players do that, but I guess because it's my team and our franchise player, our franchise quarterback doing things like that, franchise left tackle, Hall of Famer doing things like that. It was almost like, wow, like they're really gonna do this, because if they're gonna win, they're gonna win as a team. If they're gonna lose, they're gonna lose as literally a team, even with the injured players like participating. And I think that's not talked about enough, at least in Philly. It was then, but I think people kind of gloss over that now. So like Wentz, he'll be on the sidelines tomorrow. Like he was there during the preseason, and I think that also maybe helps Foles in certain situations. Maybe it helps relax him, because let me tell you, man, the link is going to be crazy for this opener against the Falcons, and Foles might be anxious. It happens, even as a defending champion. Like you go out there, and his first pass could be an interception return for a touchdown, but I don't think, unless it's like a complete blowout from the Falcons, I don't see the atmosphere changing into negativity tomorrow. It's going to be a celebration. It's almost going to be like another parade, but we just have a game, and I might be wrong. It's Philly. Philly's kind of weird, but they're going to be tailgating all day tomorrow, man. They're probably starting right now, actually, but it's going to be, if that helps, if that helps the players, that's going to be awesome.
Yeah, I think the atmosphere in itself is going to be incredible there tomorrow. It's going to feel like it's got to be like the all day thing. Like I would imagine.
Yeah. There's a whole bunch of events. Right. Penn's Landing. They have NFL opening kickoff, and they're having a Super Bowl rewatch party. I'm jealous, man. I want to go down there, but can't call off work the second day. But,
yeah. I've got my Jordan Mailata shirt ready to go. I got to support my fellow Australian who.
I like it. Who made the team? I thought he was going to get cut, but he worked his ass off. He reminds me of like Vaitai last year, where he stepped in and he turned a lot of heads, and he made. I don't know how much time he'll get on the field tomorrow, but. Maybe in garbage time when the Eagles are up 3 touchdowns, maybe we'll see that.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because when he got drafted, because everyone knows, like all my friends know, I blindly support pretty much any football player, basketball player who's from Australia. Just that's that's where my dad's from, and it's got a lot of meaning. But I was following The Athletic like every week. I was reading whatever Bull Wolf and Chill would put out. I'm like, okay, how's he doing? How's he doing? Like I found myself searching out, my lot of information. Like, oh man, he's gonna be okay. He's gonna be all right. All right, good.
Yeah.
And they found out he made the team, and I was like, oh, perfect. Like it finally works out. And, I'd be interested to see how much he plays at all this year. I think, he's been pretty much a project, and I think he's got a great left tackle to learn from in Jason Peters and also Coach Dowland. So I'll be interested to see his development and definitely be rooting him on from out here, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I know it's gone pretty long, which is always good. It's a good conversation. Yeah. So where let people know again about Straight Shooters, Philly Influencer, where they can find you on Twitter. I know you've got a big following and you do a lot of good work with WWE and Philadelphia Eagle GIF. So, the floor is yours. Let people know Philly Influencer, Straight Shooter, where they can find you.
Oh man, I appreciate that. PhillyInfluencer.com. We are on Twitter _influencer, and on Instagram, Philly Influencer. And on Facebook, you can go to Philly Influencer, search PhillyInfluencer.com, and like our Facebook page. We do a ton of social media postings, really getting on that, videos, GIFs, pictures, memes, and just to get the conversation going. We enjoy that on the social aspect of it. I run the website and write for it. A lot of Eagle stuff, obviously, but basically all Philly sports related and culture and social. So we every weekend, like what's going on in Philly this weekend. Our social and culture writer Candace McLean does a great job of basically rounding up the best of the best every week for that. And we do a Sips and Eats post, which is the best food and drink picks throughout the week from Wednesday. So that's always on every novel-related content there. So we kind of try to branch out a little bit to do things a little bit differently than some of the other sites around here. And the owner, Sean Brace, is now a DJ on Real 106. It's a throwback hip hop station here in Philly, and he DJs every Saturday night from 7 to midnight, playing some of the best old hip hop stuff. I think he did a lot of Biggie last week. So great dude. We all work hard. We're a team there. So PhillyInfluencer.com, we're always hustling, trying to give the best content that's not always talked about, and even inside the game type stuff. Adrian Fedq, our Eagles reporter, does a fantastic job breaking down the games. He did it for all the preseason games. He previews every single game. So our Falcons preview is up on the website now, so you can check that out. So like PhillyInfluencer.com. So check that out whenever you have time, and make sure you like us on all our social media accounts. And the Straight Shooters podcast, Vaughn and I record every Wednesday. Obviously, he's a little bit busy this week working for the Eagles, so we couldn't do it this week. But I appreciate hopping on your podcast to talk about wrestling and football. You can catch the Straight Shooters every Wednesday night on YouTube, usually around 7 o'clock Eastern time. We do post the show on iTunes as well, generally the next morning. But we're also on SoundCloud, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, basically any podcast app that you enjoy using, we should be on there. So search the Straight Shooters. We have 162 episodes. I'm not sure every single one would be streamed, but wildfireradio.com, every single one is available. So you can go to wildfireradio.com. They have a ton of great shows, sports related, not all sports, but a lot of the sports shows are fantastic. So they have a bunch of Eagles ones, they have baseball. It's just a great, I think they just bought some new land or new office buildings. So that's awesome. We'll have like 3 studios in there. Sports Radio 94 WIP has some personalities to come and do some shows at Wildfire Radio, and they use those studios too. So got a good thing going over at Wildfire Radio. So make sure you check them out at wildfireradio.com. And also a lot of my wrestling writing for mainly WWE pay-per-views at this point is at phillyvoice.com. So I have my SummerSlam, my latest one is the SummerSlam recap, and so I have my thoughts and opinions on that. So you can go to phillyvoice.com, the sports section. They have, the wrestling subsection, and you can check that out there.
Cool, man. Well, thank you very much for the time. My name was Ryan Anderson. You can follow me at Gully Blanchard, GULLYBLANCHARD. The podcast will be coming back usually once a week, depending on kind of how life goes. This is the first one in about 8 to 9 months. So thank you guys very much for checking out the debut return of the debut return. So I'll be back next week. Nick, thank you very much, man, for coming on the show, and had a great conversation, man. We got to do this again soon.
Appreciate it, man. It was a good time.
Yeah. So we'll see you guys next week. Thank you guys for tuning in. And until then, be good.